Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Rukia, Sui-Fong and Yoruichi? Part 2. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Naruto was standing on the ground looking at the forbidden scroll before he looked at Rukia, who was staring at him in a combination of horror and shock. And just before Naruto was about to leave, when suddenly a couple of Anbu suddenly appeared near Rukia and Naruto, where one of them started checking on Rukia's wounds, the other went over and grabbed the scroll, then turned to Naruto. "Uzumaki-san, the Hokage would like to speak to you." Naruto internally sighed at that, knowing that the old bastard was going to ask him about why he killed Mizuki instead of capturing him for interrogation, but he knew that it would have been useless as, not only was the scroll a decoy, but whoever convinced Mizuki to try and steal it was so in order to either test Konoha's ability to react from a traitor, revealing himself, or it was part of something larger. Either way, Naruto was going to go talk to the old man. On the bright side, Naruto would be able to get the Fuinjutsu scrolls he was promised, though to be honest, since he had Minato Namikaze's memories, Naruto had all of the information on Fuinjutsu that he needed, but even so, he was going to still to take the scrolls and see if they held anything Minato didn't know. Naruto looked at the Anbu. "Fine, I'll go see the old bastard," said to the Anbu before he disappeared in a burst of shunpo, surprising both of the Anbu and Rukia, and reappeared on the top of a store in a part of the village, and a second later two distinct sounds announced the arrival of what Naruto started calling his group, and turning around he saw that all four of them looking at him. "So did you enjoy the show?" Naruto knew that they were watching him when he started following Mizuki. After all the five of them had made a deal to stay together, they had taken to the air and kept an eye out for any of the other Anbu, but then their attention was back on Naruto when he used Rikinjaka to kill Mizuki. They all sensed that Naruto had coated the blade with chakra that acted as a buffer to his Zanpakutoms that allowed a limited amount of its power through. It was interesting. Halibel was the one that spoke up, as seeing and sensing what chakra had on Zanpakuton were interesting, and thoughts about what would happen if Zangetsu and Benihim were used in the same fashion, and what appeared in her mind was one word: precision. Halibel had heard what Zangetsu and Benihim were capable of, while she witnessed what Rikinjaka was capable of herself, and a precisely controlled Jutsuga Tenshin was a scary thought, especially with the level of power that he had access to. Naruto chuckled at that before he walked towards the edge of the roof of the building they were on before he hopped down to the street and started making his way towards the Hokage tower. The sound of four thumps on the ground signaled that his group was following him, and judging from their reiatsu, none of them liked that fact that they had to stay together when he, himself, said that any one of them could beat the village's strongest fighter, but at the same time the four of them understood that they were surrounded by humans that had access to an energy source that was previously unknown to them until they ended up here. Even though Riryoku was used as a stabilizing agent for this chakra energy, something that they learned from Naruto, and they didn't know how chakra would affect any kid the three Shinigami used, let alone when it came into contact with their bodies, but to have to continue to stay in a group when they were surrounded by weaklings, by comparison, was starting to get on their nerves even if they didn't show it. The Shinigami and Aranker's attention was brought out of their irritating situation when they noticed that they were in front of the Hokage building, where they followed Naruto in and went up the stairs and into the Hokage's office, where the old man was sitting behind his desk with his arms arsed in front of his face and his hands intertwined. "Welcome, Naruto. I see that you have brought your four companions with you. Skip the so-called pleasantries, you piece of shit. We both know why you called me here for. Why I killed Mizuki." Naruto wanted this meeting with the old bastard to be over as soon as possible, even if it came to him simply walking out of the room. And the sole reason why he was going through with this was because of the Fuinjutsu scrolls, and even though he didn't need them, didn't mean he was about to tell the old monkey that. Sarutobi looked at Naruto for a second before sighing. "Very well, why did you kill him, Naruto? If you had captured Mizuki, then he would have been interrogated to find out what he knew. Which would have been completely useless, as whoever convinced the dead idiot did so with the intention of the attempt, more than likely, failing, and even if he did succeed, then the mastermind would have obviously killed him anyway, as he had fulfilled his purpose. Even if you had interrogated the dead idiot, you would have, at the least, only gotten a name that would have, more than likely, been fake." Naruto stated the scenarios that had the greatest chance for the current situation. Sarutobi sighed as he knew that what Naruto had said was what most likely would have happened, but with humans it became, virtually, impossible to accurately predict plans from just a single situation. However, if your enemy had an accurate insight into how you thought and your character, then any plan that they made for you would be an almost guaranteed death trap. "Enough, I didn't come here to talk about my actions with a dead idiot. I came here to get the scrolls you promised me over 2 weeks ago. You've had more than enough time to assemble all of them." Naruto said to Sarutobi as he didn't want the old bastard to waste any more of his time or try to think up ways to, either, delay him from getting the scrolls or lessening the number of scrolls Naruto would be taking. Sarutobi looked at Naruto with slightly wide eyes with a sudden, abrupt change in Naruto's demeanor before he realized that a part of him still saw Naruto as he was before his month-long absence, as dealing with the troublemaker that the boy was for a number of years had left its mark on him very well. Sarutobi then snapped his fingers and an Anbu appeared in the room with a small wooden box in their hands and walked up to the Hokage's desk, then laid the box on top of it before disappearing. Sarutobi opened the box and turned it around to show Naruto the contents, a number of scrolls, as promised, here are the scrolls. Naruto looked at the scrolls and then looked at Sarutobi incredulously. This is all there is, this pathetic amount of scrolls is all the Konohagakure has on Fukinjutsu, with people such as Mito Uzumaki, Jiraiya, and Minato Namikaze, and that small number of scrolls is everything. Naruto said to Sarutobi, while spitting of Minato's name like it was poison. Sarutobi was shocked at hearing Naruto say his father's name in such a way and could only think of two possibilities for Naruto's attitude: his month-long absence or Naruto had somehow gained some sort of knowledge on his father that resulted in Naruto's response. Whatever it was, Sarutobi knew that whatever was keeping Naruto in Konoha wasn't his loyalty to the village. If he ever had any in the first place, and Sarutobi couldn't afford to antagonize Naruto and his group with Jiraiya currently out of the village, and while he did have the utmost confidence in his shinobi's capabilities, having someone of Jiraiya's power was reassuring. Naruto looked at Sarutobi and noticed that what he had said shocked the old bastard, something that Naruto was enjoying, before he closed the box and started walk towards the door, and just before he walked out, he looked back at the old man with narrowed eyes, before every member of his group was out the door. As Sarutobi watched the last of Naruto's group left, he could only sag in his seat and let out a breath that he didn't know he was holding. Never before had he felt any child have such power, and the power in Naruto's last gaze froze him. Sarutobi turned his mind to a different matter. Team assignment. After having seen what Naruto did to Mizuki proved that he was more powerful than any ordinary genin, even the ones called prodigies, and yet it happened so fast that a majority of people would claim it as catching the late genin by surprise. However, since there was nothing that Sarutobi could do about Naruto's grades, he was still a part of the team that he is assigned for the real graduation test. When Naruto and his supposed team faced off against Kakashi Hatake, it will not only give Sarutobi another chance to see Naruto's abilities, but also prove that Naruto had far more power than he showed when he killed Mizuki. Sarutobi had no idea. Naruto and his group walked out of the Hokage building and then used Shunpo and Sanito to appear back at his apartment and walked in where Naruto just threw the box in a corner before he sat down on his couch and let out a sigh and wondered just how long he would still be in the village, as, even though it hadn't even been a month, Naruto was getting fed up with Konohagakure and its inhabitants but knew that the time to leave it would come. He just needed to be patient, something that his past self wouldn't have been capable of. After a couple of hours later, Sui-Fong, Rukia and Yoruichi had decided to get some sleep while Halibel stayed up to make sure that none tried entering the apartment, mainly the Anbu and the recently revealed root operatives, while Naruto had taken Rikjin-Jaka and Benahim off and set them on his table before going to his bathroom and started getting ready for bed. Despite all of the power and knowledge that he had gained, he was still human and still need to sleep every night, unlike the four females of his group, and as he finished up and walked out of his bathroom, he wondered what tomorrow held and, more importantly, what Zanpakuto he would take with him. It was on that thought that Naruto suddenly realized something. Each of the Zanpakuto that Naruto could use, even if he didn't create a spirit weapon for all of them, could not be called true Zanpakuto, as no Asauchi, shallow hilt, were used in their creation. And were nothing more than solidified reishi that had the shape and power of a Zanpakuto, and as such, he could create a single blade and then channel each of the spirit's power, but the first thing he would have to do would be to talk to each of them to make sure that all of them were okay with such an action. Naruto wielding each of them was one thing, especially when they all had their own forms, but confining each of them to one blade was completely different. And so before Naruto could do anything tomorrow, he would talk to the Zanpakuto and see if they would, at least, test out being confined to one sword before committing to anything new. After all, Naruto didn't want to do anything that would destroy any chance he had at forming good relations with each of the spirits. Naruto closed his eyes and took a breath before he opened his eyes and saw that he was in what he called the meeting room, a large area that had 4 doors at the cardinal points and an assortment of furniture with a single individual that was sitting on a couch, and a second after Naruto had appeared the 4 doors opened and 5 beings walked out, with 1 being female. 2 of them being Zangetsu and old Uchiha Bak. 1 was a woman with delicate facial features with blood-red colored hair done up in 2 loops, though her hair was long enough to reach the middle of her back. She was Benahim. One was a man that had pale skin with deep red eyes and hair that was white at the top and gained color on the lower portions and was wearing armor that was glowing red from the proximity to his body, while the plates farthest from his body were bright yellow. This man was Rikyunjaka. The last being had a humanoid form and was completely silver, like metal. This being was Kimka Sujetsu. Once the 5 spirits chose to either stand or sit while Naruto stood in front of them before he addressed them. All of you probably know what I'm going to ask. Yeah, because all of us weren't unceremoniously ripped from our origins, then put in a specially created Zanpakuto to kill a man with a god complex, sent to a different world or universe, and then all of us spirits get transferred into a kid that is even younger than Ichigo. I don't think any of us really care about being confined to a single blade, so long as each of us gets a chance. Zangetsu said in a sarcastic tone at the being before he switched with an annoyed tone. That may be true for you Zangetsu, but I'm not going to just assume that's the opinion of the others on this matter, especially since this is about something that none of you have ever experienced before, so if you could, at the very least, exercise some patience, this meeting will be done far faster, and then you can go back to doing what you want. Naruto said to Zangetsu, making it absolutely clear that this was going to happen, one way or another, and nothing would stop it. Naruto then turned to the other spirits, who seemed to be in thought, before Rikyunjaka spoke. In theory, what you are suggesting makes sense, and I can see the logic in it, but my pride, as the strongest Zanpakuto, will not allow me to go along with this idea. Naruto nodded his head at the Fire Zanpakuto's decision before looking at Benihim. This seems like an interesting idea, so I'll give it a try. Naruto understood Benihim's reason as he had Kisuke's memories and had expected some part of her to want to experiment with something, whether that was with her powers, an opponent, or her current situation. Kisuke's nature as a scientist obviously was given to Benihim. Naruto took a breath. Thank you for telling me your opinions on this matter. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to talk to Kimka Sujetsu. After Naruto said that, Zangetsu, Rikyunjaka, and Benihim all stood up and walked back to their respective doors and went through them, leaving Naruto alone with the metallic being. Before Naruto looked to Kimka Sujetsu, I know that you have something that you want to say, considering that this is the first time that we have met face to face, so here's your chance. Kimka Sujetsu's metallic form rippled. There isn't anything that I could ask that you don't know the answer to, as you have access to the memories of Sasuke, though I suppose that wouldn't be true as there is something that I have been wondering. Do the other 4 know of me? I'm sure that they have their suspicions. After all, I did make blades for the other 3, and the 4 were there when Aizen was defeated, his body broken down into nothing but Reishi, then all of that power, his, them Gyouku's, Ichigo's, Yamamoto's and Kisuke's, were transferred into his Zanpakuto that was specifically modified for Aizen's enhanced state. Where the power of such an occurrence transported them into an entirely different reality, and the Zanpakuto that Kisuke had made, with the help of Letsunomiya, to defeat Aizen and absorb all of his power, was then embedded into the abdomen of a boy, who then gained the power and knowledge of the 4 that were absorbed. Kimka's head titled to the side a little before his form rippled again. That is true, but if they have their suspicions, then why haven't they confronted you about it, especially if they know you have Sasuke's memories? Naruto closed his eyes for a second before he opened them. I don't know, and I'm not going to ask them. The 4 of them already have much to come to terms with, being in a completely different reality, surrounded by people that they know nothing about, and to top it off, they have to look after a boy that has knowledge and powers of their reality. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm not overly eager to pile more on top of them. After Naruto finished talking, he left the meeting room, leaving Kimka to return back to its own realm, and when he opened his eyes, he looked at the nearest clock and noticed that the meeting had only taken around an hour, and out of the corner of his eye, Naruto saw Halibel was looking at him, was talking to all of the Zanpakuto spirits. Naruto told Halibel, who nodded, where he then headed to his room and went to sleep. Naruto was sitting in the classroom of the academy with only Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno being the only 2 others that were left. All of the other genin had left with their Jinin sensei. The next day, well, he had sat as far away from the 2 of them as the classroom would allow, with Rikyunjaka resting up against his left shoulder, which allowed him to lay out the fused Zanpakuto he had created for Zangetsu and Benihim. The blade is much longer, roughly the length of the first Zanpakuto that appeared for Zangetsu, and becomes more curved as it nears the tip, with 3 protrusions along the blunt end of the sword close to its tip, with the inner portion of the blade a crimson red, while the outer portion was black. While retaining its manji-like shape, the tsuba becomes more curved and jagged. Attached to the base of the hilt is a crimson tassel with wisps black, outlined red, energy trailing along its length in erratic patterns. Naruto remembered what his group's reaction was when they saw the new Zanpakuto, along with their reaction to certain revelations. Flashback. Naruto was sitting at his table eating his breakfast, while his mind was currently thinking of what the blade that would house Zangetsu and Benihim would look like. So far he knew that he would keep Benihim's red tassel and crimson coloring, but other than that Naruto wasn't sure what the finally form would look like, probably a modified version of Tensa Zangetsu. After Naruto had finished eating and cleaned off any dishes he used, he finally decided on what the Zanpakuto would look like and summoned Benihim and Zangetsu to him before both of the weapons turned into Raishi, before traveling to his right hand and converged into a blade. Naruto looked at the newly fused blade and nodded in acceptance. It was after Naruto's new Zanpakuto that the others had joined him, with Sui-Fong, Yoruichi, and Halibel walking in through the door, while Rukia had come out of the bathroom, fully dressed. "Good, you're up. If you weren't I would have kicked you out of bed myself," Sui-Fong said, as she hated laziness, before she noticed the new blade. "Where did you get that Zanpakuto? And why can I sense Zangetsu's and Benihim's Reiatsu in it? For your first question, I didn't get this Zanpakuto anywhere, I made it. For your second, both Zangetsu and Benihim have agreed to being confined to a single blade." At first Sui-Fong, Rukia and Yoruichi could only look at Naruto in shock, as they knew that what he had just said was impossible, as well they weren't certain. Asauchi were sent to Shinragetsuin, Spiritual Arts Academy, for the Shinigami hopefuls that would then turn the Asauchis into true Zanpakuto. Impossible. There's no way that you could alter a Zanpakuto to such a degree. Let alone two of them. Naruto looked at Sui-Fong, the one who finally spoke after he answered her questions. "You're right, there is no way to alter his Zanpakuto, but there is just one problem with what you said. When did I get my hands on a Asauchi?" At Naruto's question the three Shinigami's eyes widened as they realized what he said was true. He never had a Asauchi, could never have one, and since that was true then what exactly were the Zanpakuto that he was currently using? "You're correct, and since we have no way of getting to the Soul Society you won't have an Asauchi, but that just raises new questions. If those aren't Zanpakuto then what are they?" Sui-Fong asked Naruto as she knew that no one else among their group who could answer such a question. "Ichigo." At hearing the softly spoken word Sui-Fong, Yoruichi, and Naruto looked at Rukia, who was surprised at the sudden attention, in confusion, while Naruto was looking at her in interest, as Rukia may have realized what he was getting at, or she simply connected the current situation to Ichigo's. "When I first met Ichigo, a hollow had attacked his family and he tried to fight it, but that only resulted in me being injured, and I was forced to transfer my powers to him or we both died. He killed the hollow with a Zanpakuto that was in his hand." After Rukia had finished talking about her meeting with Ichigo when Yoruichi suddenly realized something and looked at Naruto, who noticed her stare. "Figure something out," Yoruichi Naruto asked as she had more than likely figured something out. At first Yoruichi said nothing, taking her time to think everything through. "You're hiding something from us, aren't you?" Yoruichi said to Naruto, "I thought about your situation and Ichigo's and they're both similar, neither of you gained an Asauchi. So drop charade and tell us what those are already." Yoruichi indicated to the Zanpakuto that was in Naruto's hand. Naruto could only grin when Sui-Fong and Rukia both looked at him after Yoruichi's explanation. "I figured you'd be the one to get it, Yoruichi." "Very well, I'll stop with the waiting. What this is?" Naruto held up the Zanpakuto in his right hand. "Is the Shinigami equivalent of a Quincy's bow." At first the three of them said nothing before Sui-Fong spoke. "So all of your Zanpakutos are solidified Raishi in the form of a sword with all of his Zanpakuto's power." "Almost, but take what I said literally." When Naruto had said that, Rukia, Sui-Fong, and Yoruichi all had wide eyes in shock and disbelief, which wasn't that surprising to Naruto, as Rukia, Yoruichi and Sui-Fong were around Yamamoto, Kisuke, Aizen and Ichigo, whose power and knowledge he had absorbed, and three of them were Shinigami, while one was a human Shinigami hybrid. Only Ichigo was capable of having Quincy powers, and he never showed any hint of possessing them during his time as a Shinigami Daikon substitute. "I know what you three are thinking, and normally you would be right, but let me say just this, what if they didn't know? What if they had Quincy powers but never knew about them?" When the three of them heard that, they all thought about it and realized that if that was true, then that would explain what Naruto had said, but the question for them is how far down Ichigo's family line did one have to go before a Quincy appeared? Wasaki Kurosaki. Rukia, Sui-Fong, and Yoruichi looked at Naruto. That is the name of Ichigo's mother and was a pure-blood Quincy. The three of them said nothing as they were trying to come to terms with what Naruto had just told them, something that he understood, that Ichigo Kurosaki, someone that had been on their side for a number of battles, was half Quincy, and while Sui-Fong was wondering how Ichigo couldn't have known that he was a Quincy, Yoruichi and Rukia already knew that if his mother truly was a Quincy then there was no way for Ichigo to know about his mother's heritage. When he first met Rukia, his mother was already dead for roughly 6 years. Naruto watched as the three of them were digesting his words and without saying another word, grabbed the new blade off of the table and walked out of the door, leaving Akage Bushin to take care of his dishes. Flashback end. Naruto's attention to the blade and his thoughts was interrupted when the door to the room opened and a man with spiky silver hair, a forehead protector that was tilted to cover his left eye, and a face mask covering the bottom portion of his face. Naruto knew this man was who Rukia had said would be his team sensei, Kakashi Hatake. Kakashi turned to look at the three of them, and Naruto saw that his lone visible eye was half-lidded. "My first impression of the three of you is that you're boring." When the man said that all three of them had different reactions, Sasuke simply narrowed his eyes in annoyance. Sakura gave Kakashi a flat stare, while Naruto simply looked at the man in boredom. Really, that was all that Kakashi was going to do, tell the three of them that they were boring. Kakashi then moved his hand and formed a single seal meet me up on the roof. And with that he disappeared in a burst of smoke. Naruto looked at the spot that Kakashi was at for a half a second before he got up from his chair, put Rikin jacket in his sash, and picked up his newly acquired Zanpakuto and rested the back of the blade against his shoulder as he made his way out of the room, where Sasuke and Sakura followed him shortly after Naruto had walked out of the door. When Naruto had arrived on the roof, it was to the side of Kakashi sitting on top of the roof's railing reading an orange book and looked up when he sensed Naruto's presence. "Well, with the three of you here, I guess we can start now." Naruto didn't need to turn around to know that Sasuke and Sakura were behind him, he could sense their chakra and their Ryoku. Naruto walked forward until he reached a small number of steps that lead to a lower portion of the roof that held the railing and used the steps as an impromptu seat, adjusting Rikin jacket in his sash so that he could sit down and move his new Zanpakuto to where the tip was against the roof and the hilt was resting against his right shoulder while Sasuke and Sakura sat down near him. "Alright, I think that the four of us should get to know one another better, so how about you tell me your names, what you like, what you dislike, your hobbies and your dreams for the future." "Okay then, why don't you go first, sensei, so we know what to say," Sakura said, causing Naruto to immediately consider beating the shit out of Kakashi so that he would no longer have to be near Pinky. "Okay then, I'm Kakashi Hatake, things I like and things that I hate. I don't feel like tell you that. My dreams for the future, never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies." He only told us his name were the thoughts of Sasuke and Sakura, while Naruto was now revising his earlier about beat the shit out of Kakashi to get away from Pinky to now doing it to get away from all of them. "Alright, your turn, Pinky." Sakura scowled at Kakashi's nickname for her before speaking. "My name's Sakura Haruno, my likes are." Sakura stopped talking and looks at Sasuke and giggles. "My hobbies are playing trivia games and..." She looks at Sasuke again and giggles. "My dislikes are Ino Pig and Naruto Baka." Kakashi, using his peripheral vision, looked at Naruto and saw that he wasn't affected by Sakura's statement, something that didn't really surprise Kakashi, as the Hokage had debriefed him that Naruto had changed during his month-long absence from the village. "My dreams for the future." Sakura looked at Sasuke for a third time before she started to blush and giggle madly. After hearing this, Kakashi could only shake his head at how naive the Kanachi of today were, focusing more on boys than their own training, before he turned to Sasuke. "Okay, you next, broody." Sasuke slightly scowled at Kakashi nickname before he spoke. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan and kill a certain someone." I was afraid of this. It seems what Itachi did really messed with him and made the kid revenge driven, not that I can blame him. I'll have to keep an eye on him. Kakashi thought, as he knew that he had a lot of work ahead of him. When it came to Sasuke, Sakura was a completely different matter if the three of them passed the test, that is. "And finally, you blondie." Naruto just looked at Kakashi for a second, not having any reaction to the name's nickname. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I don't have a lot that I like and the number of things I hate are too numerous to count. My hobbies I'm not tell you. My dreams for the future is none of your damn business." After Naruto had finished speaking, the three people around him had different reactions. Sasuke and Sakura were looking at Naruto in shock, surprise, and confusion, as it was a well-established fact that Naruto loved ramen, he ate the stuff every day, and shouting to the heavens about being Hokage. Kakashi looked at Naruto knowing that he wouldn't be the same before his month-long absence, but still not a single mention of ramen or about the Hokage position was still a bit surprising. "Well, now that we know each other a bit better, I think it's about time I told you about the true test." Kakashi spoke before he was interrupted by Sakura. "True test? But sensei, we already passed our test." At this, Kakashi just smiled. "You really didn't think that becoming a genin is as easy as passing a written exams and some small test, did you?" At this, Sakura blushed slightly, as she actually did. That was actually used to weed out those that didn't have the potential to be shinobi. Now, as I was saying, this test would be held tomorrow morning at Training Ground 3 at 7 in the morning. But that Kakashi got off of the railing and started walking towards the door, and before he reached it he looked behind him at the three genin hopefuls. "And don't eat anything, you'll just end up throwing it back up." Before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto internally scoffed at Kakashi's words, like he would fall for such words. He showed up 2 hours after all of the genin had met with the Jonin senseis, and he expected them to believe that he would arrive on time. Yeah, not likely, and seeing as how Kakashi had left, Naruto stood up from the steps and disappeared in a burst of shunpo, surprising both Sasuke and Sakura at his sudden departure. Next morning, 9 a.m. On training ground 3 were two genins. These genins were Sasuke and Sakura, and they had been waiting for their sensei and their other teammate Naruto to show. They had been at the training ground since 7 and had been waiting for 2 hours for Kakashi and Naruto to show up. By which time their patience was almost out. Just when the two of them were about to leave the training ground to search for their sensei and teammate, though extremely reluctant, when they noticed a figure walking towards them and were able to see that it was Naruto, wearing the same clothes from yesterday, after 10 seconds. "Naruto baka, you're late," cried Sakura as she started making her way towards Naruto, fully intending to give him a beatdown for making them wait, and Naruto had always her target for venting her frustrations on. Naruto continued walking towards his two teammates, and it wasn't until Sakura was in front of him, with her right arm raised in the air, that he used Shunpo to appear standing on a branch in one of the trees and watched as Sakura looked around to try and find him, before giving up and turning around to rejoin Sasuke when she saw him in a tree. Which surprised her at how fast he got there, and the fact that Sasuke had yet to notice Naruto before she ran to the tree that he was in and screeched at him, how did you do that?" Naruto looked down at the screeching howler monkey in annoyance. "First off, none of your business, and second, if Kakashi isn't here by the time that I showed up, then how could I be late?" Naruto asked her, annoyed at the fact that she thought he should explain any of his actions. As for explain any of his techniques, even if Naruto explained them, she would neither be able to understand or use any of them. Sakura was surprised at Naruto's response, and before she could give her own reply, Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves, catching Sasuke's and Sakura's attention, and when they saw that it was Kakashi, Sakura was the first to react. "Sensei, you're late." Kakashi chuckled and gave her an eye smile. "Sorry, I suppose that I got lost on the road of life." Sasuke and Sakura were looking at Kakashi in shock at having a jonin give such a lame excuse, while Naruto only scoffed at such a pathetically weak excuse from the person that's supposed to be a sensei to 3, and not only was he late, he was the one that gave the time for them to arrive in the first place. But he also gave an excuse rather than own up to his own mistake, and taking into account what he did to the 3 of them yesterday, Naruto's opinion of Kakashi wasn't good. Now Naruto just needed to see the man's combat ability. After everyone had settled down, Kakashi explained what test he was going to use with them. He called it the bell test. He would have 2 bells, and they would try the best to get them from him before the time was up. Kakashi also explained that if they failed to get either of the bells before time ran out, then the 3 of them had failed the test and would be sent back to the academy. Kakashi had brought out a timer and set it to go off noon. When he started the countdown, Kakashi told them the test had began. Sasuke and Sakura quickly jumped into the hiding spots the nearby forest offered and began to plan what they would do to get the bells. Naruto, on the other hand, simply jumped down from the branch he was still in and walked towards Kakashi and stopped about 10 feet from him, where Kakashi spoke up. "This is a surprise, you're not hiding like the other two." Naruto scoffed at that it would be useless to hide, "Besides, you won't stop me from getting those bells." After Naruto had finished speaking, he adjusted his grip and the fuse blade and casually held it out on his right side. Kakashi looked at Naruto for a second, then to the black-red blade, before he spoke bemusedly. "Really, all by yourself, and I doubt that you've been practicing Kenjutsu for long, so how are you going to accomplish that?" Like this, after Naruto had finished speaking, he dashed to Kakashi and thrust the blade at his chest that he barely avoided by jumping to the left with a completely wide eye. Naruto spun on the spot and slashed at Kakashi's chest, leaving a gash that blood freely flowed from, before he exploded in a cloud of smoke, only for it to reveal a log. Kakashi looked at where he was once and exhaled in relief. That was too close, as he looked down at Naruto from the branch of a tree that was near a small river. "He's fast. Apparently whatever happened to Naruto gave him quite the speed boost, and if that's the case, then I have to assume all of his physical got a similar boost." Kakashi glanced down at the center of his chest. The same spot he would have had a wound if he hadn't used a Kawarimi replacement. The biggest problem isn't his Kenjutsu skills, though if the glimpse is anything to go by, it's dangerous. It's the blade's reach. Kakashi was pulled from his thoughts when he noticed Naruto was rushing at him again, and when he got within 10 feet of Kakashi's position, he jumped into the air and said red. Where the crimson color of Naruto's blade started emitting the same color light and then slashed at Kakashi, who jumped to the right. When Naruto's blade made contact with the bark of the tree, a pulse emanated from the blade and a crimson 2-dimensional shock wave fired from the blade. The shock wave severed the branch from the tree without any resistance, causing Kakashi's single eye to widen. Naruto then channeled chakra along the blade, which quickly turned crimson and slashed at Kakashi, releasing a wave at him. Kakashi watched as the crimson wave of energy came barreling towards and noticed that the tree branch was being destroyed. As the crimson wave passed over it, Kakashi really didn't want to get by that before it washed over his form. Naruto watched Kakashi became enveloped by the crimson wave where he felt his presence disappear, most likely a Kage Bunshin. After he had gathered enough Reishi that allowed him to stand on air, Naruto quickly spread his senses out and noticed that Kakashi was underground less than 10 feet from the tree, moving his left foot, making Naruto parallel to the recently destroyed branch before he said only 2 words black-red before channeling even more chakra along his blade before a deep black started mixing with the crimson and then jumped into the air as the aura of black and red around the blade increased before gravity brought Naruto back to the ground where he slammed the fused blade against the ground. The black and crimson aura spread across the surface and a second later a large portion of the ground was destroyed and revealed a completely shocked Kakashi. "Well, looky what I found," Naruto said with a small smile, which only grew when he saw Kakashi's expression. Watching as Kakashi jumped out of the newly formed crater and away from him, Naruto lifted the blade from the ground, where a black-crimson aura appeared around the blade again, before slashing at Kakashi and sending a wave of energy at the Jinnin, where he jumped to the side to dodge, then fire off 2 more waves of energy. After Kakashi had dodged the last energy wave, Naruto used Shunpo to appear in front of Kakashi, shocking and surprising the hell out of him, and slashed at him with an overhead strike and then a twisting slash when Kakashi dodged the first attack. And Naruto angled the string that held the 2 bells, then lunged at them with his free hand before he lashed out with a kick that connected and sent Kakashi sailing through the air before he crashed into a tree, which then proceeded to break from the impact. Naruto tossed both bells in his hand a couple of times while looking at Kakashi's down form. "Well, that was fun. Though now I guess this test has gone from trying to get the bells from you to finding me." And with having said that, Naruto used Shunpo to disappear. A mocking laugh could be heard as a small wind traveled through the area. Kakashi groaned as he stood up, wondering what the hell happened to Naruto for such a drastic change and increase in abilities, where he stretched his senses out trying to find Naruto, whereas after failing to find him after 5 seconds, Kakashi knew that he would have to look for Naruto the old-fashioned way. He let out a sigh. Just great. All Kakashi had to do was show up, not necessarily on time, and then toy with the genin hopefuls and see if they could work as a team, but then something that no one could have predicted happened. Naruto, who had reappeared after his month-long disappearance, completely vaporized the image everyone had of him when they heard what he did after graduating from the academy and then killing Mizuki in the same night. Course, even with Rukia verifying that what Naruto did is truth, there were some that still didn't believe. Even after the Hokage had told Kakashi everything he could about the changed Naruto and going through a number of mental exercises to separate the Naruto everyone in the village knew with the new Naruto, who carried, at most, 3 swords with him and was almost always accompanied by one of the 4 incredibly good-looking women. Kakashi had no problem admitting to himself that he was jealous of Naruto for his luck. After Kakashi had started the test, a part of him was expecting the 3 graduates to find some place to hide to buy themselves time and think up plans against him. Instead, Naruto comes at him like a damn juggernaut, instantly putting him on the defensive while trying to figure out the best way to turn things around, only he never did. The 2 times Kakashi had put some distance between him and Naruto, the young man discovered where he was in less than a second and came at him with a strange ability that Kakashi had never seen before and forced him to use the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and used a Doton Jutsu to hide in the ground where Kakashi had hoped to have enough time to think up a plan. Unfortunately for Kakashi, Naruto had different plans as he destroyed the ground he was hiding under and then proceeded to take both of the bells and disappear with that weird movement technique. Now what Kakashi needed to decide was to either try and find out where Naruto was and take back the bells, this time putting forth a serious effort, or just wait for the time to run out. Sakura could only look at where Kakashi is standing in complete and utter shock as she couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Naruto Baka, the dope, had just went toe-to-toe with the man that is supposed to be their sensei, if they passed the test that is, and had won while, simultaneously, taking the 2 bells that guaranteed a person's chance at becoming a true genin. It was something that she couldn't believe. Even if Naruto had disappeared and then returned after a month, where he then disappeared for another 2 weeks to take the graduation test wearing new clothes and carrying 3 swords around, it was so different from how the blonde idiot normally was that he was mistaken from a different person at first. But even though he had such a drastic change, Naruto shouldn't have been able to take on a Chunin and win, but that's exactly what happened and Sakura saw it with her own 2 eyes. Perhaps that is why she is having such a hard time understanding the events she had witnessed. For so long Naruto had acted and dressed in such a manner that for anyone to say that changed would make others question if their head was on straight, drunk, or was trapped in a game jutsu. But Naruto had changed in such a drastic manner that he is able to take on and beat a shinobi that had attained the rank of Chunin. Which was something that Sakura was sure that Sasuke wasn't able to do. At first she held an absolute belief that Sasuke would have gotten the bells from Kakashi. And after watching Naruto go at Kakashi and the speeds that the two moved at, she was all but certain Sasuke wouldn't have beaten Kakashi. She was confident her Sasuke would have gotten the bells at least, but nothing other than that, at least this point in time, neither should have Naruto, but yet, he had. Something had happened to Naruto, and Sakura was certain that she wouldn't be able to understand for years to come. Sasuke gritted his teeth in anger at what he had seen. Naruto, the dope, had went head-to-head with Kakashi and had won. Not only that, but he also took both of the bells, something that he knew that he could do. After all, taking on a Jonin would be incredibly difficult due to the fact that any Jonin, worth their kunai, is an experienced shinobi and would make any fight very difficult, if not impossible. That was if Sasuke was attempting to actually win. All he needed to do was to grab one of the two bells, something that he felt was well within his abilities to do, but Naruto had beaten him to it and he had actually won in a fight against a Jonin. The power that he had displayed was something that Sasuke desired, thirsted for, in order to kill Itachi and avenge his clan, and as much as he loathed the thought about asking the dope, he would, but only to find out where he would attain such power for himself. Yoruichi closed her eyes as her thoughts turned to Naruto. What a curious young man, getting all of the memories of Ichigo, Yamamoto, Kisuke, and Aizen, yet wanting to taking the time to get to know each one of them himself, when he simply shift through his acquired memories to learn everything about them. On top of gaining the memories of those four, he had also shown that he had gained the Zanpakuto of three of them. There wasn't any doubt in her mind that Naruto had gained all four Zanpakuto, along with the full scale of their power, which included a Kajoku-fused Aizen, which was something that was completely terrifying to think that a child had access to. Yet, despite having all of that terrifying power and the knowledge to use it, Naruto had decided not to use the advantages given to him, though that simply could be him waiting to build up his relationship with the four Zanpakuto before doing anything. Having full access to Jinchurika's power would make it almost impossible for the four of them to stop him. But to be honest, Yoruichi wasn't as concerned as Sui-Fong, take things way too seriously and just needs to stop and have a little bit of fun. Naruto also gained their memories, and as such, he did know what happened with Aizen when he tried to make his grab for power. Granted, he faced off against considerable opposition from the Gate 13. Though gaining the memories and power from Ichigo may had an effect on him. Though for now the only thing that Yoruichi and the other three could do was wait and see and plan. Sui-Fong is in the air looking down on Training 3 as she was watching Naruto destroy the man that was assigned to be teacher. If there hadn't been any interference from them, and from what she is seeing, Naruto was using the chakra, the energy that everyone in this world was capable of using, in conjunction with the Zanpakuto for some interesting results. Something that would most likely mean trouble for them later on. Sui-Fong was going to be keeping a close eye on Naruto, something she was going to do in the beginning due to the amount of power that was transferred to the boy after he had revealed that he had the powers and Zanpakutos of three well-known Shinigami, with one of them being a Shinigami Dake substitute. It was when he revealed that he also had the memories and power of Aizen that Sui-Fong's decision to watch him became her first priority. Her second would be to end him if he became even remotely similar to Aizen. During Sui-Fong's first confrontation with that traitorous bastard, she had failed to kill him. This time she wouldn't leave anything to chance. Rukia was sitting on a rooftop, her mind whirling, her thoughts currently on Ichigo and what Naruto had revealed about him. All along, the orange-haired boy had Quincy powers and no one, not Ichigo, not her, not even Ichigo's family, knew about them, and now that Rukia had the knowledge she did, now it was easy, and already having his Zanpakuto when she transferred her powers to him along with taking all of her power at the time. After all of that had happened and in so short of time, Rukia knew that Ichigo was an extraordinary individual, but to think that he was part Quincy all along was shocking, to say the least, and a part of her wonders just how long that bit of information would have gone undiscovered before Naruto revealed it. Which brought something to the forefront of her mind. Naruto had gained the memories of four well-known names of the Sirete, one of which had made the Gate 13 and stood at its head for over 1,000 years, two of the greatest mind Sirete had ever. One, Rukia would argue, was an insane idiot, while the other one had been a part of the Gate 13 for over a century, learning their strength and weaknesses, and the last one was what everyone at the time thought was a human that had borrowed the powers of a Shinigami, her, in order to protect his family, and then invaded the Sirete in order to save Rukia from being wrongly executed. All the while turning certain individuals from enemies into temporary allies. And after all of that had happened, Byakuya had actually talked with her and explained certain things to her, mainly why he acted the way he did and his reasons for not stopping her execution, and she had all of it thanks to a certain orange-haired boy. Thinking about it now, Rukia now knew that the moment she saw that Ichigo had stopped the Sankyoku, twin punishment, from killing her, was the moment that she admitted she had feelings for the orange-haired teen, but because of Aizen, Ichigo was gone, and the possibility of her confessing her feelings. Halibel stood on top of the Hokage monument with her eyes closed, letting her senses spread out, searching, beepizing, memorizing the Ryoku of all of the humans that wield chakra, particularly the humans that had been continuously watching them since Naruto had brought the group of 4 back to his village. Naruto Uzumaki, such an interesting human, given power that surpassed the 3 Shinigami and her powers combined, and acts, not only as if he had such power from birth, but as if it was the first time that he started training with them, which technically was true for the second part. Even if one were to ignore the technicality, Naruto still had all of the memories of 3 Shinigami that had centuries worth of experience, and yet he chose not to use such an advantage in lieu, quickly mastering all of the Kidman and any Shinigami fighting techniques, something that she commended, but such a choice wasn't going to sway her. No choice or words on Naruto's part would convince her otherwise, only his actions would, as Aizen used a lot of words, but a single action revealed exactly who he was to her. Never again would Halibel allow someone's words, alone, to sway her. She would see their actions, for that is the path to their true self. Naruto was quickly jumping through the trees with a small amused smirk on his face and 2 bells in his left hand as he thought about what Kakashi and the 2 kids were experiencing after witnessing one fighting such a spectacle from someone everyone considered a joke of a shinobi and thought that he would have died on his first mission outside of the village. Naruto knew that Kakashi wouldn't take what happened lying down, he would want retribution to what he was put through. A newly graduated student that had failed the graduation test 3 times had just fought against him and won. The man's pride had been damaged and would need to do something in order to make himself feel better. But that Naruto had stopped on the branch that he was going to jump off of and used Shunpo to appear in the sky near Sui-Fong and sat down as he looked down at the training ground and sensed that Kakashi was looking for him, while Sakura and Sasuke had stayed in the same spot for a little bit before they started following Kakashi. Sui-Fong looked at Naruto for a little while, listening to the humans move through the small forest searching for Naruto, before she turned to him. "Why do you continue this farce? Why continue to toy and play around with all of them?" Naruto looked at Sui-Fong and chuckled a little. "For something that is essential for anything. Time, I want the time in order for my plan to work." When Sui-Fong heard that, alarm bells started going off in her head, as that was something the likes of Aizen, Kuretsuchi, and Urahara to say, all 3 of which she didn't like, with 2 of them she wished to personally kill. "And what exactly does this plan of yours entail?" "Increase the bond between the Zanpakutos that were transferred to me, increase my skill and arsenal of chakra techniques, and finally leave Konohagakure. After that I'll just see what happens." Naruto truthfully told Sui-Fong, as he had no reason to hide what his plans were. The fact that Naruto had memories of Aizen also played a factor in him telling the truth, as the moment he had said the word plan she would have already been on guard. Naruto already knew that they would be watching him closely for fear of him turning into anything like Aizen, though they should realize that if he really was anything like Aizen, then he wouldn't let the 4 of them discover such traits until he was ready, and by then there wouldn't be anything the 4 of them could do to stop him. Lucky for them, Naruto had absolutely no desire to mimic Aizen. Sui-Fong looked at Naruto for a couple of seconds before the sound of a ringing bell was heard. "That's interesting. That is supposed to signal that this test is over, but it isn't noon yet." Some would find it strange as to why the test would end early. Course those would be newly minted genin or people that didn't think something his old self would have fallen for, but not now. Naruto knew it was a trap, and one that he would use to his purpose. Naruto stood up. "It would be rude to keep them waiting," he said before he used Shunpo to appear on the ground and, after sensing where Kakashi was, started heading towards where Kakashi began his test. All the while Naruto was able to sense where Kakashi was hiding. Surprisingly, Sakura and Sasuke were hiding close enough that they could see Kakashi, along with any clones he had hiding, while he walked in Kakashi's direction until it revealed an open area with log posts in the ground, 3 of them, and a large weathered rock. Once Naruto had gotten close enough, he could make out names inscribed on its surface. When Naruto had gotten to the 3 log posts, Kakashi acted. A number of shuriken came out of the nearby group of trees and arced through the air towards Naruto, who simply raised his left hand, and a hexagon green shield appeared and stopped the flying projectiles. Kakashi jumped down on the ground before rushed at Naruto, who simply pointed his index and middle finger on his right hand at Kakashi and said, "Had number 4. By Akurai, pale lightning," and fired a concentrated bolt of lightning from his fingers at the center of Kakashi's chest. Kakashi, surprised that a recently graduated academy student could use an elemental technique, as the chakra nature and drain were too high, and the control need for such a thing would be too much for shinobi that were in a similar situation as Naruto, wasn't able to do anything as the lightning bolt pierced his chest due to the speed it was flying through the air. Before a cloud of smoke suddenly erupted around him, only to reveal a log of wood when it dissipated. Naruto lowered both of his hands back to his sides and looked around, wondering which one would strike first, the Kakashi in the trees or the Kakashi under his feet. Naruto's got his answer when a kunai with a paper bomb attached to it came out of the trees, well sensing that Kakashi and his clone were waiting for his next action. Naruto drew Rikyunjaka, while channeling Kaiten Chakra along the blade, sent a wave of flames at the kunai, incinerating it while causing the paper bomb to detonate, and after the flames and shock wave from the paper bomb dissipated, Kakashi jumped through the dust cloud, with a kunai in his right hand, and Naruto sent a wave of flames at Kakashi's head where, after he ducked under the flames, he threw the kunai at Naruto, who used his right leg to kick the flying knife, and then suddenly jump into the air, as a pair of hands suddenly burst out of the ground and attempted to grab Naruto's feet, only to grab air. Naruto looked over his left shoulder at the ground before he suddenly started to spin around in the air. Flames ignited along the blade, leaving a trail as Naruto spun, before Naruto slammed the flaming blade into the ground, and a couple of seconds after the fire came into contact with the dirt, it was reduced to ash, revealing the second Kakashi for a split second before he too was consumed by the fire. Naruto looked over at the original Kakashi, his blade still aflame, and saw that he had grimaced, knowing full well the power that is Rikyunjaka. Naruto accepted the reaction. Even if they weren't its true flames, they were still far more powerful than ordinary flames, but wonder what Kakashi was going to do next. It was beyond obvious that Naruto was completely different than what information Kakashi had been given to him. Kakashi looked at Naruto, a few drops of sweat starting to form on his face, and wondered just what the hell happened to the kid during his month absence, as no one should have been able to make such impossible changes in such a short amount of time. If a person had been training for years, it would have been easier to accept, gaining 2 swords. Though it had been reported that he had started out carrying 3 Kenjutsu skills, when combined with whatever Naruto was using was guaranteed lethal. His sudden bursts of speed, Kakashi had actually lost sight of Naruto when he did that, and it was only thanks to years in Anbu and going through the Third Great Shinobi War that allowed him to dodge most of his attacks and his elemental attacks. The fire alone was capable of turning the ground to ash after a couple of seconds, while the lightning was capable of being fired at incredible speed with great accuracy. Altogether, such abilities should belong to someone that had been around for a couple of decades and had participated in the last war or specifically training themselves to use such abilities, not someone that was 13 years old and, a month prior, the dead last of the academy. If you were to look at Naruto's academic record for his entire time in the academy, you would see someone that had no future as a shinobi. Now the question was, what was Kakashi going to do? He was already being serious enough for a simple spar. He could continue to try and attack Naruto to get an opening to get the bells back, though considering his speed and that fire he would be burned to a crisp. He could wait for Naruto to attack him. Though that has basically been happening throughout the entire test so far, which would continue on until the test ended for real, and now that Kakashi thought about it, what was up with Naruto's stamina? Everyone in the village knew that Naruto was a stamina freak, even though a few knew the reason why, but that didn't explain how he was able to do so much physical activity and have yet to break a sweat. Kakashi was brought back to reality when he heard the crackling of lightning in the air and used the Kawarami no Jutsu, substitution, and replaced himself with a log of wood as a bolt of lightning struck him. Kakashi looked at Naruto and saw the boy had a small smirk on his face. "Watch out, Kakashi-san, wouldn't want you to be distracted and get hurt, would you?" Said man saw the smirk on Naruto's grow, which was starting to piss him off, acting as if he was the student and Naruto was the teacher. Before Kakashi could continue his train of thought, Naruto suddenly appeared before him, completely shocking him, and sent a horizontal slash at his neck, forcing Kakashi to lean back, before Naruto swept his legs out from under him and, using his free left hand, pushed him to the ground, then stabbed Rikyunjaka in the ground near his head. Intense heat radiated from the blade as a warning, should he try something foolish. That's enough of that, you even think of needing chakra together and you get to experience those flames yourself. Naruto said to Kakashi as the little game that the two of them had been playing was starting to get boring. Honestly, Naruto would only humor Kakashi for so long before he put an end to it. As entertaining as this has been, I have significantly better things to do with my time than to humor you. Suddenly the sound of an alarm going off could be heard, and that brings this little test of yours to a close, which makes me Naruto pull the 2 bells out from somewhere, letting them dangle in the air. The winner. Kakashi looked at Naruto in mild anger and shock, anger at the fact that, not only had Naruto beaten him, and did so without any visible exertion on his part, he is a newly minted genin, while Kakashi held the rank on Jonin, survived through the Third Great Shinobi War, and was trained by Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, himself. As such, Kakashi felt justified at the mild anger he had for Naruto at the moment. Naruto, seeing the anger in Kakashi's lone visible eye, smiled knowing he was the reason for it before he looked behind him to see both Sakura and Sasuke coming toward them. Naruto stood up and pulled Rikyunjaka from the ground, the blade momentarily being engulfed in flames before extinguishing. And sheathed the blade before looking at Kakashi as he got off of the ground before looking in the opposite direction in time to see both Sakura and Sasuke land on the ground, then started walking towards them. Naruto waited until the two of them were close to him before he tossed one bell to each of them and began to walk away. "There's nothing that this group can offer me. It would be nothing more than a waste of my time if I was put on this team." Naruto walked away, his piece said, before he disappeared in a burst of shunpo. Kakashi looked at the spot where Naruto disappeared and knew that he wasn't going to like this, since Naruto had gotten the bells from him, but then later gave them to Sasuke and Sakura. They had technically passed the test, yet, at the same time they didn't, and with Naruto saying he wouldn't be a part of what would have been Team 7. Normally that would result in Naruto being sent back to the academy, but with the skills that Naruto had shown along with his unusual abilities, he wasn't sure what the Hokage was going to decide. Turning back to Sasuke and Sakura. "Alright, the two of you can head home, I'll give my report to the Hokage, then I'll come by to inform you of what's going to happen." Currently in his office, the Hokage was debriefing his son Asuma and recently made Jonin Kurenaiki about their teams that had passed their tests given to them by Asuma and Kurenai. Just as the Hokage finished debriefing them and was about to dismiss them, Kakashi appeared via Shunshin, body flicker, in the office. "Kakashi, I didn't expect you to arrive for a couple of more hours. I'm guessing you finished testing your latest team?" the old Hokage asked, puffing his pipe. "Yes, I have, Lord Hokage," replied the copy nin. "So Kakashi, did you finally get a group that was able to pass or what?" asked Asuma as he was curious if this team had done what none of the other teams Kakashi had tested done, pass his bell test. Asuma wasn't the only one curious, even though not as interested as others might be. Kurenai was curious as she knew that Sasuke Uchiha, Rookie of the Year, and Sakura Haruno, Kanachi of the Year, were assigned to Kakashi's team, so this team's chances of passing were better than the others that attempted. The one thing that would jeopardize the team's chances would be Naruto Uzumaki. Kurenai knew of his reputation, same as everyone in Konohagakure, and when the teams were being assigned to the Jonin, the grades of graduating student were seen by all of them, and Naruto's were bottom of the barrel, with Shikamaru Nara being a close second. But that was if you didn't take into account of his month-long disappearance and sudden reappearance, sporting a new look, carrying 3 swords, and accompanied by 4 women of various levels of beauty and a completely different demeanor. "Well, technically, they did," replied Kakashi. "What do you mean by technically?" Asuma asked as the way Kakashi said his answer was a little confusing. Granted, he had his own thoughts on what he meant, but he would rather heard from Kakashi himself. Kurenai was curious as well, as it wasn't every day that someone like Kakashi gave such an odd answer. Granted, the man thinks up the most ridiculous excuses for his constant tardiness, but what he had just said was something he normally wouldn't do. The Hokage looked at Kakashi with slightly narrowed eyes as he started speculating on what Kakashi had said. Did that mean that someone had passed his test in a way he wasn't expecting? Naruto was at the top of his list on that one. Or did it mean that one of the genin, again Naruto was at the top of his list, somehow was able to get the bells? Regardless, here is in needed answers from Kakashi. "Alright, Kakashi, perhaps you should explain what happened during the test." Asuma and Kurenai also wanted to know what had happened during Kakashi's team assessment to make the man act as he was. Unfortunately, what the 3 of them got was something that they didn't want to hear, as Kakashi stated that he was only able to test Naruto, though in reality it was more surviving, before Naruto managed to beat him and grabbed both of the bells and disappeared for a short while, which allowed Kakashi to come up with a plan and set a trap at the memorial stone. Kakashi went on to tell them that after Naruto reappeared and the fight continued, where he revealed that Naruto had both a Raiten and Kaiten chakra affinity, something that shocked Asuma, Kurenai, and the Hokage, as the 3 knew that Naruto didn't have any chakra affinity strong enough to preform any elemental technique. Kakashi then said that Naruto had brought the fight to an end just in time from the test to end, where Naruto then gave Sakura and Sasuke each a bell before he disappeared. As Kakashi finished talking, Asuma, Kurenai, and the Hokage were left with more question than answers, something that none of them like, especially the Hokage, and yet it couldn't be helped. Naruto's sudden disappearance and reappearance was the start of the questions. The 4 mystery women that accompanied Naruto on his reappearance added even more questions. Naruto's attitude, weapons, clothing, and knowledge added even more questions. Now the Hokage had to think about what to do with Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke. Sakura and Sasuke had the easiest immediate fix as, thanks to Naruto, the 2 of them hadn't been tested by Kakashi, but Naruto is a far more complicated issue. Naruto was able to defeat Kakashi, a war veteran and one of Konoha's strongest junins, as no one knew what Naruto was capable of now. Almost everything Naruto did would have been a surprise. Naruto could be put under an apprenticeship of a Junin, but with Naruto's new attitude towards the Hokage, any Junin he assigned would be continuously under suspicion by both Naruto and the 4 mystery women. Just what was he going to do? So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.